Hello, welcome to Peruse. Today we're joined by Sam, who joins us all the way from Kent. Sam, I'd like you to introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Hello, I am Sam. I am an avid reader at the moment. I'm really enjoying it, and hopefully we get to talk about some of the books or some of the issues related to the books via the real world.
True. Sam is an avid reader, as she says, but she also recommended the book that we're going to go through today. And the book is called The Queen of the Conquered by... what's the name of the book?
Calarenda. Oh, that's how I pronounce it.
You say it better than I do. So we're going to go through that and we're going to break down. I've got some questions. I hope you have questions for me too, because I didn't really...
Couple, but they're more discussion than questions. But
that's it. That's even better.
Really.
That's even better. So I don't read the same books that Sam does. So her recommending a book for me was a little bit painful. I'm not going to lie. It was a bit like, oh God, she'd probably recommend me to read the whole entire Harry Potter series. But
however, there's a genre for everybody. I do believe that. I know a lot of people struggle with finding their genre with books, hence why a lot of people don't read, because they haven't found their click yet. There's books out there for everyone, and some of them do bore you to death. It's not your book. If it doesn't grab you the first 5 pages, put it down. It's not for you. There's more out there.
That's it. So anyway, we'll go straight through it. But I'm gonna start with this little sort of basic questions first before we go into the books. My first question is, what got you into books?
As a teenager, or very young, maybe not teenager, maybe 10, 11, I was pushed into it via the Goosebump books and things like that, just gifts. But obviously when you get older and the teenagers, you're more into music and fun than you are reading. So I didn't really, to be honest, I didn't start reading again till the last couple of years. So that's quite a big gap, almost 20 years without really reading. I was more into having fun with my mates than I was picking up a book. But, the last year and so, with everybody indoors and not working as much and more time on our hands, I've fallen back in love with it again.
Oh, that's interesting. So you had you had that gap, like I did, where fun was more fun.
Oh yes, out with your mates, out, shopping and doing all the girly fun things that we love to do. But then, like I said, this thing changed in the world, and as you get older and kids and life and what have you, things take over, and I've just found it much more, not fun, but more, able to do. You can't go out all the time, you can't do things all the time. At least reading, you can do it anywhere, and if you've got the time, on transport or at home or what have you. So yeah, I've really got back into it.
Nice. So what would you say is your book count at the moment?
At the moment, and this doesn't mean I've actually got this in my house, because I do give away a lot and I do sell them on, depending if I'm not bothered about it, but say it's close to 200.
200 books. So on average in a year, how many books would you read?
Well, this year, I think I'm about, not this year so far, not like within the last 12 months. I'm not saying this year so far. I'd say maybe 150, maybe a bit more that I remember.
You're putting me to shame. I thought my 50 books was a lot, but that's a.
But it is a lot. It is, because it is. I mean, for someone like I said, being indoors and locked down, not really doing much. If you are doing bits and pieces, it's unhuman to read so many. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
need time on your hands, and I feel like I actually have had quite a lot of time on my hands this last year. So that's what I've been doing, to pass the time and for interest. But if I was, busy doing other things and stuff, then God, yeah, my count would be much lower.
My next question was going to be about time. So you said about you having more time. So for those that are stuck with kids and stuff like that, how would you say, as the audience doesn't know this, but you're a mum as well, so how would you advise them to find the time, or which part would you say as a mother, okay, this is when I sneak in a good book?
Me personally, I do it after the homeschooling. I have a good 3 to 4 hours in the day. Hopefully that covers the school, the school learning block that we're all supposed to be doing at home, all the classes and stuff. So after that 4 hours, you have a break and chill out, kids do what they want. That's my time after, you know.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, this is going to sound like a pretty dumb question, but why reading? Why do you read for you? Oh, we're frozen.
Where I could
You're
read.
back.
If I
You're
get
back.
more than 2 hours a day, I count it as a fantastic day.
Just repeat that for me. Just repeat, because I lost you for a minute. You froze for a second.
Sorry,
It's all right.
can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you. You just lost. Yeah. Uh-oh. We lost you. We lost you again. This is what happens when you do a live on Kent. Totally lost her now.
It's mostly rubbish now anyway, with repeats and nothing's coming on. To be honest, I found it extremely boring. So that's the last thing I've been doing. I've just been jumping into the books.
Okay. Fair enough. All right then. So, I feel like I have to go straight into the book now. I have to say, for myself now. So we've done the intros. So let's get into the book. But I have to say thank you. All right, because you didn't choose a book. Yeah, put that right up there. You didn't choose a book that I was like, because I was dreading it in the first place. But
I thought it would be more for you this than quite the others.
And I think
It's quite relatable.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got some magic and some abilities, and which I like because it's quite fantasy. But I like it as well because it's quite down to earth and it's real and it's events that have happened in the world. And it's situations that everyday normal people have found themselves in and dealing with. So what she's going through and has gone through in her life, it's not like a million miles away from where we can understand. We can relate to her. Yeah. And even though some of the things she does is not the best and she's not perfect and stuff, she's got a lot of flaws, but we can relate to how she's ended up like that, her mind frame, where she's come from, and hopefully where she's going to go to in the next book, which I haven't read yet. The next book has come out. So we just follow her journey really on, hopefully, like the Queen of the Conquered, hopefully she does free her people as it is and lead them to a better life.
Well, for those who don't know the story, and I don't want to give it away because you have to read it. The gist is we're following this young lady. She's pretty young, through a journey which, through a time of slavery, basically, and she's having to go through all these turmoils. But at the same time, like you said, there's all these supernatural, magical things that happen in it, and she has some sort of abilities, and. It's the history part that got me. I was like, oh, cool, I feel at home now because I like history.
I thought
this
you
is
would
great.
Like that, yeah. More than you do the magic.
I'm like, yeah, okay, I could definitely buy this. And because I found myself thinking, yeah, all right, that's actually historically accurate. That would have gone down like that during that time. So I liked it from that perspective. But yeah, the best thing about it, though, was because I like to read something that makes me disappear from whatever is going on around me. So if I can disappear within the text or the sound, because I was reading this on audio, I wanted it to see, because you've already read it in text, so I wanted to see if it'll have the same impact on audio, and it did. It was really, really intense, because there were some parts where I was like getting angry. I was, and I'm sure you know which parts. It was like the parts where they, it was getting me fired up. There was a part where, without giving too much away, where one runaway slave is getting beaten up, and I was just like, ugh, I want to get in there and, do something to that person. But then I realized, no, I'm reading a book. It's not real. Like, relax. So just out of curiosity though, which is your favorite part of the book, or which scenario would you say, yeah, this was very well written?
To be honest, there's quite a lot. There's not one part. I'm not going to drivel on about all the different parts in the book, but there's the great thing about this book. There's a lot of books out there that there is that one scene or that one part. Just like in films, there's this one scene or one part that makes the film. This book is good because it's not that. There is so many layers to it, which makes the whole book fantastic. There's not this one scene of the book that is like, yeah, that's the best part or the most explained or anything. I do think, I'm not, to be honest, it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, the end, without giving it away, the ending, I think, is a brilliant ending. You don't see it coming at all. It is a complete surprise. And how she deals with the ending of it herself, and what, I'm trying not to give it away, but hopefully what comes out of the ending from her point of view or in her life, to see what's going to come after is going to be the real shock, because it's like, is she going to change? Is she going to stay the same, change, be what her people need her to be? Or is she going to stay the same mind that she's in, believing what she's doing is right for her people? Basically the way it ends is like, well, what's she going to do now? How is she going to rise to where she wants to be for her people? Is she going to carry on with her own opinions, or is she going to actually try and listen to her people who she's supposed to be helping and unite as one? So hopefully I'm not giving too much away, but
no, you definitely haven't. I mean, the plot was really good. The way the story is written, she definitely paints. What I like the most is the author tends to describe the feeling, the air, the smell, the texture so good that I'm imagining, the scene, like the parts where she's describing the beach, the ponds and all of this stuff, and there was one part where she's describing the Sojourner goes to a tea to have tea with a certain individual, and she just describes the entire room, and I'm just like, oh wow, I'm in that room in these linen, cotton stuff. I'm in there, and I'm imagining myself in this countryside thing, and it gave me this vibe. It gave me a vibe of I remember Beyonce's Lemonade album, Formation album, that whole album where she kind of did the whole French bourgeois Creole look. There's a video that she did with all these ladies, and she had all these fantastic women in there, different stars, actresses and whatever, and they're all in the countryside, dressed in linens and very posh and plush, very very much like a New Orleans scene. And it just reminded me of that. It was, as soon as she started describing it, I found myself in that video thinking, oh, yeah, that reminds me.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it was nice.
It's very fancy. It's very posh. Her surroundings and the way she's brought up and everything. It is painted in a really, really nice way, and you can visualize yourself there in that time. I'm not completely sure what era it's supposed to be, the 17 or 1800s, but you feel like you are there with her at that time. It's brilliant.
The other thing that I found disturbing was the relationships that they had with marriage. Like, they just had the whole story, the whole book pretty much had like it's just a duty, we're just going to do it for the sake of doing it. And it was just very much like, like I thought, oh, there's no feelings, emotions, it was just duty, done, sealed, you go about your business. A lot of the characters within that were just sort of, where's your husband? I don't even know. You know, he's just minding his own business. And where's your wife? I don't know.
Marriage for convenience.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're not there at those times, so we don't know how true that is. You know, some people still do that today, marriage for convenience or like status, etc. You know, but yeah, basically everybody in the book seems to be married in that way. You know, there's no affection, there's no feelings. Many of the characters in that book who end up being married, it is a marriage of convenience and power and what they can bring, you know. But how true that is of those times, who can say? We don't know, you know. It's a bit, but it is good. It's written in a good way like that. It is.
So would you say there's any part in there that you didn't like?
Yeah, there was. I'm not quite sure which part it was off the top of my head, to be honest with you. But there was a bit, not that I didn't like, maybe not like is the right word, but some of her actions I felt were quite heartless as a character, regardless of being a woman or a man. Because a lot of people can say, oh, she needs more feelings, she's a woman or whatever, rubbish, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, male characters or lead characters in books and stuff have emotion as well, you know, and you can see, you know, their hearts on their sleeves and stuff. But the way that this character is written, she's heartless in a way. She's kind of like just an iron heart, you know. She doesn't let anybody in, and I don't know if book 2 is going to make her have a heart.
I think you're right, because she does have a few relationships in the book, and there's a certain relationship.
Does, but they're not really relationships, are they? It's more flings, and it's all from
Yeah,
but
there's a part of me that felt like had she been a little bit more considerate of, maybe I understood it in the end, but at the beginning I was kind of thinking, well, this person might actually like you. It might not just be a thing, you know, like, but I get her bravado was simply because of her history and everything she'd gone through, and obviously she had a mission and a goal to accomplish, so everything had to be, you know, that brick wall had to be put in. So I get it, and yes, you're right, the idea that she had to be mellowed down, I wouldn't have wanted it to be it. Once you finish the book, you're thinking, no, she has to be, her cold heart is justified in a sense. But the part that I didn't like was, it was a little bit like, maybe because I like it, like, get to the point. There was a lot of, okay, right, let's get to it. You know, it just felt a little bit dragged in some parts, again, without giving it away.
I agree with you there. I'm not going to lie. I did feel a way, a couple of pages I might have skimmed through, because some of it did feel a bit like you're not getting to the point. You're not getting to the point fast enough. And maybe because she's quite an early writer herself, like she's not got hundreds or many books out, and as people get older, when they write, the style is going to be better as they get older. They're going to fix the errors. So once people start writing, compared to the books that they end up with, there's going to be a massive difference. You know, she'll end up with something 10 times better than this in 10 years. This is only one of her first books, but as a first book, I think it is fantastic.
For her first book, and I'm all about punctuation, grammar, and all that stuff. I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, so she's got that on point. She wrote the pages and made me follow the page without me being like, hold on, wait, I need to go back. What was that again? Yeah, even on audio, I didn't have to go back. And say, repeat that, because I didn't quite get that. It was very much like I got it step by step. I was walking through it, because I can't stand reading a book that makes me go back, because that just means you've confused me somewhere, you know.
And that's not what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to confuse people. I mean, everyone's human, it's human error, but if you're a decent writer or a decent storyteller, your readers or listeners are not going to have to rewind to understand what you're talking about, because you will be there with them, catching them up to your point. So that's another reason why it's a very good book.
I think a lot of authors don't understand that like I said earlier, I like to be induced in the book or the story. So when I'm in there and then I find myself getting confused, I've lost that moment now.
Yeah, same.
So I have to rewind and then find it back again. And 9 times out of 10, I don't find it back. Then I'm like, oh, I'll read it later. And then eventually I don't end up reading it. So yeah, it's
That's exactly. You're human. We all do it. See, that's just a human response. Nobody enjoys being confused or anything and then wants to reread something. Half the time, you will put the book down and not read it again.
That's
You know, because it hasn't been written properly, to be honest.
yeah. So what questions do you have for me, or discussions do you have?
Suppose we could just say discussion. I mean, I just wrote down because I want to support reading, no matter what it is, what topic. I'm not fussed if people don't like the same subject with me, as long as you find your passion, because I believe strongly that when somebody reads, it's good for your imagination, it's good for your mind. I think a lot of inventors or creative people are artistic people. They like literature. It opens your mind to different possibilities and different views. And I really feel as well, when it opens you to different cultures as well, it gives you more perspective of those cultures. And if you have more understanding, you're less likely to be prejudiced or stereotype. If you've never met somebody who's Asian or anything, and then you read a whole book on Asian culture and the history or the journeys that they've been on, you're going to feel like you've got a bit more of a connection with them, or you've been, I think it's good in that respect, very much so.
I agree, because you know what made me in that context, when I was reading it and she was talking about the islands and all of these kind of stuff, it made me realize, okay, there's still a part of African history that I don't even know about. And that's the islands. I don't know about. I mean, okay, apart from individuals from Haiti, but that's individual stories. But I actually don't know the collective story of all the islands, how the West Indian came to be, how the Caribbean came to be. I don't know. So it would be, for me, it's like, okay, jot this down. So we now need to go and do more historical, searches on stories of the Caribbean, stories of the West Indies, just so that I can understand the collective, connecting, the whole lineage all the way back down. So it did, definitely tickle my appetite in expanding because like I said, I like history books.
Very much. It's made me actually add a few. I did some research on it after, and I ended up with a few more books around the Caribbean and the history of the Caribbean, but written in the way that I like, the storytelling, the bit of fantasy in it, that kind of written, not so much like a biography type thing, even though, there will be some out there, every book's for everybody. But yeah, no, it really did make me think, do you know what, there must be more books out there with the history of the Caribbean and how it came to be as it is. Do you know what I mean? And in an interesting way, not just the whole slavery thing, but
just individual lives. Yeah,
exactly. There was normal people, and how was it found, and it's just interesting things like that.
Yeah, because I mean, I would like to. So, for example, like the people that were not slaved, or the people that were there from the beginning, they I'm sure have stories. They I'm sure have journeys that they took, and how was that journey, and then obviously when slavery happened, how was that journey, and then after it, there's a lot there. There's definitely a lot to be, but there's not a lot of people screaming and shouting about it. And to be honest, both me and your culture, Caribbean wise or Black British wise, we just reading wise, we don't sing about it. We don't jump up and down about reading, as much as we should. And I think that's the downside to it. And when we do, often
really
enough,
is. I've noticed that a lot, to be honest. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm part of every group in the world, because I'm not, but there's a few little book groups I'm into, and the amount of, let's say, Black African or Caribbean or even Black British that are on it or comment on it or put their own posts on is very, very minor. There's other cultures, not cultures, well, yeah, cultures, and like Asian or American and white English, they're more active on it than, you know, than black people, or even, you know, Caribbean people,
What
which
do
I
you
have
think
noticed.
scares?
But
Do you think we're scared of reading or and writing or both?
I don't think so. God no. Especially like the part of my family that are more connected to the Caribbean, their book collections put mine to shame. But the only thing is they don't talk about it. They don't. They're not part of any groups or anything. Now maybe that's because they're of a later generation. Because the ones I'm thinking about are in their 40s and 50s. So maybe they're not so bothered about online and the internet and things like that. They're more literal about just being at home and reading a book, but they wouldn't necessarily have a group of mates or anything like that that they would talk about. So, you know, I don't know, to be honest.
What can we do to encourage? What can we do to encourage that? To encourage those that have archives of books. I mean, I'm sure they have books I've never even heard of. From the, years of collection. Those that are in the Caribbean, the West Indies, the Africa, the diaspora, to sort of, hey guys, join groups, share what you have, because what you actually have is gold dust. And people like myself and you would appreciate just going in their little library and be like, oh my days, leave me here for a week alone, I'll be fine. How can we encourage them to come out?
No, because I've tried myself with the couple of people I know that have the massive collections from how many years of books that I know many people do not know exist, and that are fantastic and have a lot of black culture and black history in it and different points of view. I have invited these people to groups and stuff, but it's not for them, and I don't know why, to be honest. Maybe it is a generation thing. Like I said, they are a bit older, but I honestly don't know. I don't know what would make them want to shout from the rooftops about their collections, because they have brilliant collections, what I've seen. So I feel like it's a shame that you've got them to yourself and nobody knows about these books that you've got, you know?
Well, I would say if they don't want to join a group, persuade them to at least come on the show, and we will read and review a book together like we did today. So yeah, what's your next question or discussion?
Let's see. I was going to mention, like, how do we keep people interested in reading, or even the ones who don't want to pick up a book or find just looking at a book or walking into a bookshop the most torturous thing in the world. How to keep them, or to get them interested in it. That's something to consider, because there's so many great books out there, and I really do believe there is a book for everybody or a genre for everybody. But to get people who are not into them, I struggle with. I don't know how to do it. I've advertised and stuff, but
Definitely education, because I think back when I was at school, it wasn't really reading wasn't it wasn't fun. It wasn't even there wasn't a lot of thought to it. It was just you were given. Yeah, they just gave you a book and they said take it home, and then we're gonna do an essay on this next week. That was pretty much it. And I remember the first book they gave me, the first few books we all got, was Goosebumps and Romeo and Juliet. So you had this contrast of books that was like Romeo and Juliet, Goosebumps. So if you weren't a reader, or you weren't even into reading, or your household doesn't come from a reading, background, you're looking at this book. Okay, so Goosebumps, I just hadn't ended up looking at the pictures, and then when I found out there was like a TV show and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, yeah, what do I need this for? And then Romeo and Juliet was like, what?
It was not for young people. I didn't.
The English was just so severe. I was like, what does that word? The first word, thou and shall. No, I just stopped in the first few sentences. I was like, okay, I can't do this. And then of course I've completely failed that English literature class because I didn't get it. So I think the education system in reading need to actually put reading in the same way that they put history.
They really
because I don't think they look, because there's also the techniques that you you have a different technique to reading based on your ability, and I have a different technique to reading based on my ability. Some of us reading is more vocal, you know.
I know this might sound harsh, but I really feel that yes, that would be great if the schools do that, but I do feel it's more the parents' responsibility, because as a parent, you know your child, you know what they like, what they don't like, how well they read. So you'd be more better suited giving them or buying them books which you feel would be better for them and listening to them read than a teacher with 40 plus students. Imagine a teacher having 40 plus students knowing which one is good for each one. It's too much. You can't imagine.
It is. I agree. I just think, I was going to bring in the parents afterwards. I just think the school having something just on reading where it can help the teachers as well as the students, I think that can be accommodated somehow. I think they have the means to do that. I think there's a lot of teachers that are put in a situation where the government can do something about it, but they just don't for one reason or another, budget cuts, etc. For example, like we find ourselves in a pandemic, a lot of the pressures come back to mum and dad at home, but there's a lot of things that they can be done. Now we find out that they can distribute laptops to everyone in the household. Well, why wasn't there laptops available anyway, to be before pandemic? So you can ask a lot of questions on what it is that the government are doing in terms of education system, because let's be honest, the education system as well is old. It's Victorian. It's not of the 21st century. It's way old. So it needs to be modernized to accommodate the kids of today. However, that being said, yes, I totally agree that parents, there needs to be at least 1 hour in a day where you and your child turn everything off and just read a book. It can be from a Beano to a simple article to a novel. Just turn everything off and read a book. There's nothing wrong with that, and then the kid will learn that, okay, this is that moment where I zone into a story, and that opens them up to the age.
Sorry to cut you. I know some schools incorporate more like targets, like reading targets. Like if the kid does 10 books in a month, then they get prizes, and proper prizes, not just stickers. Like something that they would really like, a toy or a bag or something that's out there that the kid really likes or wants, or vouchers for some shop. Do you know what I mean? And I think that a lot of schools should do that. I don't know if they're all doing that. And I think also secondary schools could adopt it as well. Obviously do different targets to the primary schools and make the gifts or the things much more interesting, like a mountain bike or, paintball, whatever. Do you know what I mean? More targeted for teenagers, including their mates. If you read this amount of books and answer some essays on it, then you and 5 friends can go to Thorpe Park, something like that. I think schools could really do with it, because the amount of things you can get from reading, especially for teenagers, it will develop their mind so much more, and their grades with various subjects would increase, because the more you read, the quicker your brain's firing off with knowledge of these different things. I think the faster you get at responding, that's part of why reading's so good for your brain, because it's firing off your brain cells more faster, and you're developing quicker. So I think schools really should incorporate that very well. And a lot of the kids that are maybe in the bottom subjects, if they can do things like that, their confidence would skyrocket. And especially if they're if they're receiving awards and stuff. And I don't mean boring awards where a piece of paper. I mean like the actual fun
incentive awards that makes them want to do more.
The Thorpe Park trips or the mountain bike or whatever, what have you. It would be so much better for them. If we had this when we were in school, Charlene, I think the amount of people that ended up not doing anything would be so much far less.
We get into our background afterwards, but you touched on it. So for people who don't know, myself and Sam go back to the days of Titch and Ice Maiden, which was like... Let's not laugh.
Yeah, I was scared you were going to put a year on it then.
No, I'm not going to put a year on it, but I'm just going to... The fact that you laughed is because that's going back.
We can pretend to be younger than we are. Sure.
We are literally not going to put any years on it, but we go back to school anyway. Let's just say it like that. But so our school was very much like, you know, each to their own sort of thing.
Definitely each to their own.
Yeah, get on with it. And reading was never even at the forefront. So I definitely.
Our library was empty. That's how terrible it was. The library was empty. Nobody ever looked in there or even.
I think I went to the library to run away from a teacher at one point, but that was it.
That's what I mean, and that's the problem. That is the problem.
It was.
You know, if they did something proactive with the library that was targeted at the children actually going to that school, it could have been so much different for hundreds of students that went to that school. The fact that none of us went into it at any point unless we were hiding or whatever is just a terrible, you know, it's a bad representation of the school.
Without having to sound like I was a proper bad girl, that's all I remember doing. Seriously, I only remember running away. I'm not naming the teacher. I'm not doing it because they still work there. I'm just saying I was running away from a teacher because I should have been where I wasn't. and I was trying to, that was the only time the library seemed like a good place because no one goes there. So it was like, right, that book over there, that cupboard, sneak in, boom, and they can't find you in there. So yeah, so that, but in saying that though, we still managed to have those moments where we disappeared in our, you know, in our history, in our journey. And we still managed to come back and find it. So somewhere, somehow, I worry that there's a lot of people that don't get to do that. So as much as we disappeared into reading, there's a lot of people that may not have had the chance like me and you did to rekindle that relationship with reading and sort of want to get to read more books and find out more about, you know, anything, you know, a subject matter, an equipment.
I do hear what you're saying, I do, but I do feel like you can't force people into it. People know that there's books out there. And like I said, there are genres and there is a genre for everyone, you know. If you don't like the first few pages you've read of whatever the book is, put it down. It's not for you. There's another one out there. But however, you can't force it on people, you know. They'll find it in their own time if they want to, you know, because there's some fully grown adults out there, they're not into it at all. But like I said, there's things for everybody. Some people love reading like myself, others like inventing games or are more creative, you know.
For me, I found comics. I didn't like the Goosebumps, and I totally couldn't understand Romeo and Juliet. So Shakespeare and I just did not have a good relationship at all. Yeah. And when I saw like a little bubble, speech bubble, and loads of kapows and whams, I was like, oh, this is me. This is my capacity right here. And obviously supernatural, superheroes, that was it. I was sold. So I was just collecting that from day one, all the way through. And that's what grew, that kept me in the reading relationship. At the time, obviously, I didn't know that. I was just following the story and the superheroes. But, you know, now I'm like, oh, I'm glad I continued that love life because otherwise I probably would have just gone, oh, forget reading. And I never would have got into it. But like you said, there is so many genres for everyone. Not everyone has to stick to one thing. Hey, you could just read comics. I mean, Beano comics was sick, you know?
You can. If you look at a book and think that just looks like really boring, just words on a page, get comics. Comics are not just for children. There are comics targeted at adults. There is, you know, things for everybody, you know, and like we said as well, the audio, you can listen audio. You don't have to read words, you know. There is a different type of style of reading or learning or what have you for everybody. It's just finding what it is that you like and sticking with it and expanding it because it's going to be really good for you and good for your mind.
You're saying you do reading after homeschooling. You could do it during when you're going to the gym, you could do it for a jog, especially if you're doing it on audio. Put it on, put your headphones on.
I can't imagine running holding a book. That would be a sight.
That's going to be an accident waiting to happen. But for me, that's how I do it. I go to the gym with it or I go for a run, it's on my ears or whatever else I'm doing, especially housework. It's playing in the background just to give me, and then I escape because no one likes housework anyway. So put that on get in that Hoover, all that laundry, whatever it is you got to do, and then you just escape. Because by the time you finished the book, you've also finished the job you're doing, and it didn't feel like a chore. But no, yeah. Anything else?
Okay, this is a bit of a nerdy one, but I think that, and I don't think this, by the way, I don't think this should be like for the government to do in the first place. I think this should be just down to the everyday person if they want to do it. Because I've seen a few of these things up and about since lockdown, drop off points for people to drop their books. So instead of charity shops or binning the books, people have been creating their own little, maybe a telephone box or a little type of book holding place in front of people's houses where they can get rid of their books, and whoever's passing by can take whatever they want and read them at home.
Do you
and
know
vice
what?
versa.
I've actually noticed that at my job. Every single building I go to, there is like a section. And I remember going past, I've already picked up like 20 books already. I remember going past a few, and every time I go past this new one where they've just added some more stuff, I'm like, ooh. And I picked up a couple of books in there, but don't worry, I'll pick up some. I'll send you some pictures, like which one would you like? But yeah, they're doing like, each block is doing its own drop-off point, and they're putting it in the lobby, or they're putting it by the, there's like a window.
Fantastic. Well, maybe because I'm stuck indoors, I haven't been able to see them.
There is a lot of that actually happening, but it would be interesting if there could be a sort of a town-wide drop-off, like especially with the library closed, the library could be, a town-wide drop-off would be fantastic, because you can, go and get these books, because some people are trying, like you said, you don't want it anymore, you've read it, you're satisfied now, you're moving on with something else. It's a book that you're happy to share. Of course, there's a lady that gave me 10 books 3 months ago. She was clearing it out, and I was working in the area. I was, oh, you clearing it? I was like, yeah. Oh, and everything in the 10 books that she had was all my type of books. So I was like, give me that. I will give them a home. Don't you worry. They're gonna find a good home, and I'm gonna read them. And it was poems, from Nikki Giovanni, all of those kind of like real poet. I was like, poems, Nikki Giovanni. Come on now, I'm in. So I took them, but she was like, oh, I've got loads more. When I've cleared out all the attic and the garage and all that, she was doing like a proper renovation of the house. I'll leave them outside, come back anytime, grab them. I was like, no problem, don't worry about that. So I think there's a lot of people doing that, but yeah, it would be nice to see if people do more of a community one, because imagine...
Yes, even outside of parks and things, like you could put them in such great places where hundreds of people will go past a day. And you never know, it can spark so much more people into reading, especially knowing that the books are free, as in you can just pick it up from there. I really think things like that need to be created, and not necessarily by the government, but by everyday people who have the passion, that want to share their books, or even the ones who create the stands that the books go on,
a book exchange. Even just like a book exchange where 2 or 3 of you can get together and be like, well, I've read this book, you've read that book, well, let's do a swap. You read mine, I read yours, and then we just keep circulating the books around. And then
a lot more easier when thingy's over, but
that would be a lot more easier. But I'm thinking in terms of
that already with some people, but the thing is, obviously,
because you could just post it to each. You could post it to each other. Like now everything's on post. You could post it to each other, or you can put a drop-off point and pick it up from the drop-off point. And then it's like it's a nice way to keep the community sort of still functioning. Obviously, we know we've got lockdown and we can't interact physically, but it's a good way to do it via post or via drop-off points. But I think that's fantastic. But let's end on this author. What do you think? Did you have another question? Sorry, before I get on the last.
I don't think so. No, nothing.
Cool. So, what do you think as a go away for this author? For anyone who wants to sort of join in on her work, what do you think they should take away from this book, or what's to come from her?
I think this book would be, if you want to go on an adventure, this book is good, as in it also, as we said before, incorporates things that have really happened in the world, you know, events that are true. So even though it's got hints of magic and the supernatural and powers and stuff, that's not the whole core of the book. This book is based on real events that have happened in the world and everyday people who've had to deal with it and the way they've dealt with it and the things that have come from it. And even though I haven't read book two, it is out. So hopefully, you know, it will just get better, really. But yeah, if you definitely want an adventure with a hints of truth and fantasy, pick it up. It's definitely for you.
Yeah, I echo that too. I think for if you're looking for a strong female lead character, written well as well, because she writes them very very well, and she writes the men very powerful as well. She writes that, so I didn't feel any kind of like, oh, she downplayed one, you know, because of the isms. No, I felt like she really shined through with her characters. So if you want to read about really strong written characters, definitely go for it. And this writer is doing exactly that. And if you want to read a story that lets you escape from reality, and we all need one right now, this is the book. You're definitely going to escape. But I'm looking forward for the writer. I'm looking forward to seeing it on screen, because obviously I've listened to it. I'm looking forward to seeing it on screen. I thought, do you know what? This wouldn't be a bad screen adaptation.
There's so many books out there that are so fantastically written that you want to be made into film that it's just impossible. They won't, you know, I mean, hopefully somebody somewhere does, because even like Lord of the Rings was made in the 60s, and then they did the film in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
So a lot of the books we're reading now are only within the last 10 years. So even though I do wish they would be films, because some of them are mind-blowing. But I do think it's going to be a few years before any of them would even consider making them into films.
I say that because I watched Harriet Tubman, the film Harriet, and in that they kind of sort of touched on the supernatural element. They touched on it.
I love that.
And it was nice. So I was thinking about this, and I thought, hang on a second. This can go full blown into the supernatural thing, and it will work, because if you think about what's the American witches and thingy, what's the American Horror Story? That series, American Horror Story. That series is about witchcraft, and it's big, massive in America right now, and supernatural is a thing now on TV. So I just kind of thought the history, it'd be a different perspective to the whole conversation of slavery. It'd be a completely different perspective, because so far all we've ever had is just one side of it. It would be nice to see, you know, because there is a lot of whispers of supernatural during the slavery. There's a lot, you know, from Haiti all the way down to Africa. There's a lot of it, but it's never really brought on TV. It's always just sort of whispered in text, but no one really talks about it in vision. A lot of the stories were sort of made into a superhero context, not really like the story of Moses, for example. Moses, not the biblical Moses, but Moses was Harriet Tubman. So, you know, there's little stories. It was her nickname because they didn't want to admit that a woman was freeing slaves. Yeah. So they called her that and all that stuff. But yeah, anyway, I'm going off topic. But the point is, I really would like to see something like this put on television, even if it's just a TV series. But like you said, these things take time. Lord of the Rings took forever. Black Panther took forever.
Exactly, and these stories have been out for God knows how many years. So, I mean, honestly, it would be fantastic if these books and others like it would be made into films. But realistically, it will be many years till anybody considers doing them. You know, unless maybe me and you in a few years, if we're brave enough, will make a year.
If I do make it into a book, Sam, you're gonna work with me doing it. I'm not doing it by myself. If I do it, we'll do it together. We'll co-produce that together and get it done. But no, I've enjoyed this moment. Normally we would have done this over a glass of wine, but we would have probably finished the wine before we got to the story. But
before you finish, I'm just going to say, and this is for you as well, because you said you really enjoyed this book, the one that we're talking about. Yeah. I'm throwing it out there. I do think you will like it. It is a little bit different to the one you just read, but it is absolutely fantastic and mind-blowing. Try and get your hands on a copy of this and tell me
Tommy Adeyemi. Children
tell me how much you love it.
Sorry, lift it up a little bit. Children of Blood of...
Children of Blood and Bone.
Okay.
So get a copy of it, and next time we'll talk about it. I'm going to see how much I can get you into the African fantasy world to see how much you love it. Because I've got a lot of books based on Africa.
No, African fantasy needs to be on the forefront because it's only ever given in a morbid way. So in a literature way, it would be fantastic. I would definitely read it.
Although, speaking of African fantasy, a lot of the books, or the ones I've ended up with, they're not advertised as African like fantasy. Like the book I'm reading now is African fantasy, but I didn't even know it was African fantasy till I ended up reading it. So a lot of books out there are not advertised as being West Indian or African or Spanish or whatever.
Strategies. You think that is a strategy? I think because the moment you say African and the moment you say Caribbean, it singles you out to one audience.
It does, and I did think that. I thought that was, I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing from the authors. Like I said, the one I'm reading now is based in Africa, but I didn't know it was based in Africa till I started reading it. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'd love the ones based in Africa and the West Indies, so I would buy it automatically, but maybe it's a good thing that they don't advertise it being African because maybe it would put some people off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So maybe it is good that they didn't.
We need to stop this division of, you know, if it's an African book, then other people feel like they can't read it or they shouldn't read it. Or
I agree. I don't want anybody to be put off like that. Oh, it's African, I won't understand it or anything. You know, it's not like that. And they're not written like that. The books that are based like in Africa or the West Indies, they're not written like targeted for Africans only. And the way they're written, even though they've involved the whole culture of that part of Africa, it's not written for that culture, like just for you exclusively. It's written for everyone to understand that culture and to understand why that's going on. You know, it's very good.
It's a story, and everyone who likes reading should be able to appreciate a story no matter where it comes from, fictional or otherwise. I mean, yes, okay, you could be like, okay, I read it, but it's not for me. But to not pick it up simply because it comes from one part of the world, that's what I have a problem with. But okay, so before I close, you've recommended a book for me. What would you recommend everyone else to read? Do you recommend that same book, or do you recommend another book for everyone who's watching?
I mean, I know a lot of books don't have ages on them, and some people are different, as in they'll let young people read whatever they want, I suppose. But I would say this book, definitely this book, and maybe if you were 15 plus, 16 plus, I wouldn't target it at anybody really under that age, because it's a deep book. It's very realistic of things that have happened or are happening in certain parts of the world, even though, you know, maybe, you know, it's not all sunshine. There are some dark bits of the book that I personally wouldn't want a younger person reading. But I know that I'm a bit fussy and people say I'm overprotective and stuff like that. But that's just me. Like, if it was me at school now, maybe being 14, I would say no, do not give them this book to read. I'd say it could be more for a 16 plus person, just because some of the things, you know, it shapes your mind reading, and some things are not for younger people.
They're not ready for it yet. Yeah. No, I understand that. So I would say for everyone watching to read that book collectively and make it. You got a Facebook. I think my sister was telling me last night she's got a Facebook group with all her street. So I would say it would be something to recommend in the street groups that you have, so everyone can read it. Or if you've got your, like me and you are gonna read it, so that's my community, that's my little circle. I'd say make that your little recommended book. I'm gonna read it after, because I have to read another book for another review.
That's fine. That's fine.
After that one, because my brain is packed full of books now. for this show.
Just like mine.
Yeah, so I'm going to read it completely afterwards. But no, I've completely enjoyed this time. We could talk all day.
Fantastic. Me too. I've loved
But
it.
I'm conscious
Thank
that
you for having me.
your partner's going to kill me and your son's going to be like, what's going on? Like,
I know. They
get
keep
that much time
sneaking
off.
in here.
I see one of them shadowing in, thinking, all right, she's been here, she's having too much time off. Like, she needs to go. They're probably only allowing you this much time off because it's me. But thank you to you and for them for not even like for giving you time off.
Thanks for having me.
And I will see you. I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you later. All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
one. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Sam and everybody else for tuning in on this episode of Peruse. I hope you enjoyed it. Something a little bit different, hearing from the readers themselves. Even though Sam is a massive reader, don't be put off by that, because where she does 200, I only do 50. Your number could be 1. But wherever you start from, find yourself a book that you want to listen to, read, in a place where you want to have that's your own time. Like she said there, she's pick a moment that is yours, 30 minutes, 1 hour, tally up to you, and just read something, escape. Especially now, where our mind is preoccupied in so many different things and so many horrible things that's going on. Yeah, take a moment for yourself, 30 minutes, that's all you need. Read and just escape, and you will be so much better off for it. So again, thank you very much, and I will see you again very, very soon.